Welcome, all you sinners and sodomites, to episode 47 of Bible Stories for Atheists. I'm Josh.
I'm Linz.
And we are your guides to the graphically godly stories, literally, literarily littering
The Bible.
the Bible. The bubble.
The Bible.
The bubble. We're doing part 2 of Judges in this episode. So we're actually talking about the judge Deborah and the judge Gideon.
Yes.
It's a really great story about Deborah.
Yeah, it's very evenly told stories.
Yes.
Each gets an equal amount of time within the Bible.
This will undoubtedly prove to you that the Bible is pro-woman.
110%.
Yes. It'll settle that debate once and for all.
Certainly. I won't get angry at all in this episode. No anger whatsoever.
It's probably going to be a long one too, I'm guessing, is for this episode, but stick with us or don't. It's up to you.
They're all long ones.
They're all it's the Bible.
Yeah.
It's boring as shit.
Yeah.
But I think we made it somewhat entertaining. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, hopefully you'll edit it that way at least.
You know what would make this podcast the best it could possibly be? If I edited all the Bible out of it.
Just us talking shit about the Bible with no actual Bible in it
no
whatsoever.
context whatsoever.
Yeah.
So strap in, strap on for episode 47. God's seventh evil ex-boyfriend. Imagine it was pretty intense going to the chiropractor.
Oh my God. I thought I was going to throw up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it because you've cracked your own neck?
Yeah, not like that.
But that was like something totally
oh my
different.
God, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's crazy I would imagine it's crazy having somebody do it to you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's scary, I think.
Yeah.
Because they're just fucking with your bones.
Right.
Right? And sure, they're professionals and doctors.
Right. In his case.
Right. But it's still somebody literally just whipping your body around to crack all of your bones.
Yeah. Whipping your head too.
Oh, it's so scary.
Because I would imagine in that situation, all you can think about is all the movies where somebody's fucking Steven Seagal.
Right.
has just twisted somebody's head and he just falls over dead.
Yeah. Very scary.
It was scary to watch.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
This motherfucker, if he fucking hurts her, I'm gonna fucking kill him. Break his goddamn hands. Yeah, but you're feeling better.
I am feeling better.
That's good.
Things still hurt. My finger's still numb.
Gonna need to get you a left-handed keyboard.
It's just never gonna happen. I can't. I'm too old to retrain myself to be left-handed. It's not God's will.
To be left-handed?
Yeah. Mutants.
We know for sure there's one group that is not God's chosen people. And that's lefties. The confessional is open. The confessional's open.
Yay!
If you didn't catch it from
right, yeah, I got the hint.
So we got a message just today.
Oh,
from somebody.
Awesome.
So you haven't heard this one yet.
I have not.
It's from Zach.
Hi, Zach.
Hi, Zach. He says, "Hey, Josh and Linz, just want you to know you have a fan from China."
Oh.
Yeah. I've been listening to your show a bit over a year now. Really love it. I grew up in a conservative/fundamentalist family in West China, where my family was the first Christian followership in this region.
Wow.
And the underground church started in my grandma's living room.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Legacy Christianity.
Right. Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah. I was devoted all the way till a couple years ago, and I still pretend to be whenever I go back and spend time with my family. Although your show was not the reason why I became an atheist, I still find comfort and amusement in your conversations going through the book, which my mom made me memorize from cover to cover since I was 5.
Wow.
Keep the good work up, and bear in mind you have a massive supporter across the ocean.
Aww.
Yeah.
Thanks, Zach.
Thank you, Zach.
Yeah, I imagine coming from a family that is as hardcore in their beliefs as that, as a family who would like set up their own underground church, has got to be its own special sort of hell. I mean, not saying anything against the family. Maybe they're like perfectly loving and stuff, but just being able to come out of that is going to be hard because it's the guilt of like realizing that even though people are telling you you're going to go to hell, that you just don't believe in that. But on top of that, like there's this legacy that's now been created. It's like being an atheist in like a preacher's family.
Yeah, I that makes me think of my grandfather, who was 9 years old, I believe, when Jehovah's Witnesses came to the door, and he ended up getting converted and then converting his parents to Jehovah's Witnesses.
How does that happen?
I know.
How does a 9-year-old convert people?
Well, you have to be pretty weak-minded to have your 9-year-old son convert you into a religion.
And like what fucking planet is that okay for people to come up and only talk to a 9-year-old?
Oh, yeah.
That's no way in a million years
right.
Is that okay.
Yeah, I remember going and knocking door to door back, and this was decades ago. It might have changed since then, but like that wasn't too uncommon. Like if the parents weren't around to talk to the kid.
Yeah.
Like you talk to whoever you can.
Ugh.
Kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they've changed that at this point. But anyway, what I was going to say is it reminds me of that because, then my grandfather became extremely set in his ways and everything. And I always kind of thought it was because he had this early hint of power sort of to it.
Sure.
Like, or prestige that he did this thing of converting his parents. And so the Jehovah's Witnesses really became his identity and everything.
Yeah.
But I do feel for people who are in China who have these religious beliefs and everything. Like I'm all for religious freedom.
Sure.
Yeah. I really do firmly believe in people being able to believe in what they want to.
Right. The family is fighting and hiding and because of something they believe in.
Yeah.
But then you don't believe in it. But do you believe in the family's right to do that?
Sure.
I don't know. It's got to be very complicated. So, sorry, Zach.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it's easy. But good for you for going with your beliefs and
or lack thereof.
Yeah. I mean, atheism is still a belief. It's just a belief that there is not. Not nihilism, but yeah. Anyway,
not far from it.
Yeah, it's super awesome that there's people listening to us in China.
Yeah.
And thanks for writing in, Zach.
Absolutely.
Definitely appreciate it.
Yeah. And if you are a listener who feels like writing in, you can go to our website, bsfa.cc, and we have a contact page on there that you can reach out to us.
Yep.
All right. The confessional is closed.
So
I need to do an outro.
Something in Latin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Latin.
Yeah.
As you're
doing
crossing yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. That comes across on a podcast.
Right.
Crossing yourself.
Can you hear the wind?
Yeah. That's not the wind. That's the Holy Spirit. Previously on BSFA, we went through the introduction to Judges, the book of Judges. We got started with part 1 of 4.
Yep.
We covered the story cycle. You start off with the Israelites practicing paganism and losing faithfulness to Yahweh and everything. And then Yahweh gets pissed at them, so he lets some other people dominate them and subdue them. And then they cry out for help and they return to Yahweh. And Yahweh, for some reason, is like, oh, okay. And like he gives them a judge, somebody to defeat their enemies. So they follow the judge. They become followers of Yahweh again until the judge dies. And then they fall back into paganism or lawlessness, all that kind of stuff. And then the cycle just continues over and over again.
Yeah.
So
it really makes me think it's just not working.
Yeah. Like, really, what is the point of this? You know?
Yeah.
When I was going through this, for some reason, I kept coming back to, like, why is it again that these people are the chosen people? Like, what is it about that? And I don't think we ever really get an explanation in the Bible.
Yeah.
For, like, what is it about them that makes them the chosen people?
Because they're the ones telling the stories, Josh.
Well, yeah, ultimately. Yeah. But it's funny that they didn't even come up with, like,
a reason why they're the chosen people.
Well, they're really good at making baskets or something like that. And God likes baskets, you know, like some sort of explanation for why these people.
Well, wouldn't it go back to the very first person?
So it would go back to Abraham, where he first makes, but, like, again, like, I feel like I've read through that and I never saw, like, why Abraham.
Yeah.
It's like God just kind of picked him randomly and decided, like, here's from you, I will make a whole people that I really like, but I also kind of hate.
He definitely hates them. It's like he's their stepdad and he never really wanted them in the first place.
Right. He's going to try and make it work.
Sometimes he tries to be a really good stepdad and takes them to, like, a baseball game and gets them some comic books. And other times he just beats the shit out of them for no reason.
For no reason. He gets all surprised when they act out. I wish you weren't my real. I wish you. Oh, God, never mind. I'm going to try and make
You're not my real dad. Yeah. These 5 other gods are my real dad.
Yeah. I'm not going to serve you. I'm going to serve the balls.
They don't try to smite us every 40 years.
Yeah.
They just give us wine and like us to have sex.
Right. Badass bitches. The Israelites again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud died. So the Lord sold them into the hand of King Jabin of Canaan. The commander of his army was Sisera. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help, for he had 900 chariots of iron and had oppressed the Israelites cruelly 20 years. At that time, Deborah, a prophet, wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah, and the Israelites came up to her for judgment. She summoned Barak and said to him, "The Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, position yourself at Mount Tabor, taking 10,000. I will draw out Sisera, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you by the Wadi Kishon with his chariots and his troops, and I will give him into your hand." Barak said to her, "If you will go with me, I will go. But if you will not go with me, I will not go." And she said, "I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will not lead to your glory, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman." Then Deborah got up and went with Barak to Kadesh. Barak summoned, and 10,000 warriors went up behind him, and Deborah went up with him. They mentioned the death of Ehud at the beginning of that, but not Shamgar, who was actually the last. You remember?
Oh, yeah, which really does make it feel like they just shoved him in there.
Right. Yeah. And because he was like the one sentence long story.
Right. Okay, so Deborah, who sat under the hand of Deborah?
Under the palm.
Under the palm of, okay, I'm sorry.
Like the palm tree.
Oh, the palm of the dead Deborah, where Deborah, the
of
servant.
Bakuth. Yeah, the servant of Rebecca.
Yes.
Rebecca's nurse.
Yes.
Which we talked about, I think, in the second episode when she died just out of nowhere. They had never mentioned her before. They talked about, and she died, and they buried her at Elam Bakuth. But what's interesting is that was an oak tree.
Oh.
So, but this is supposed to be the same.
Do they have oak trees in the Middle East?
Yeah, it actually oak trees come up again in this. Yeah.
Okay. So her name is Deborah. Did she rename herself Deborah?
I don't know. Or she was named for that Deborah.
Okay.
You know.
So she's made a judge. And unlike the previous 3 judges who defeated their own enemies, she needs a man to do it for her.
It's kind of, but That's not necessarily how it works out.
No, because he then says, I'm not going. I'll go if you come with me.
Yeah.
But if you don't come with me, I won't go.
Right.
Which is, one can assume that when you say, I'll go if you come with me, you don't really need to say, but if you don't come with me, I won't go.
Right.
One can assume
I'll go if you come with me. And if you don't come with me, I'll still go.
Right. Yeah. That would, I mean, if that was the case, that can be said. But if
Right.
it's one can presume that if you say one thing, then the opposite is the opposite. Okay. And I assume by her delivering, what's his name? The king person, Jabin is going to be done through wily feminine mystique.
Kind of. It's different than what you would imagine it would be for now, like with how the setup to this. It's kind of a weird story compared to like the rest of them. We get a whole new character that's going to come up.
Okay.
Now Heber the Kenite had separated from the other Kenites, that is, the descendants of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, and had encamped near Kadesh. When Sisera was told that Barak had gone up to Mount Tabor, Sisera called out all his chariots, 900 chariots of iron, and all the troops who were with him. Then Deborah said to Barak, "Up, for this is the day on which the Lord has given Sisera into your hand. Has not the Lord gone out before you?" So Barak went down from Mount Tabor with 10,000 warriors following him. And the Lord threw Sisera and all his chariots and all his army into panic before Barak. Sisera got down from his chariot and fled away on foot, while Barak pursued the chariots and the army. All the army of Sisera fell by the sword, not one was left. Now Sisera had fled away on foot to the tent of Jael, wife of Heber the Kenite. For there was peace between King Jabin of Hazor and the clan of Heber the Kenite. Jael came out to meet Sisera and said to him, "Turn aside, my lord, turn aside to me, have no fear." So he turned aside to her into the tent, and she covered him with a rug. Then he said to her, "Please, give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty." So she opened a skin of milk and gave him a drink and covered him. He said to her, "Stand at the entrance of the tent, and if anybody comes and asks you, 'Is anyone here?' say no." But Jael, wife of Heber, took a tent peg and took a hammer in her hand and went softly to him and drove the peg into his temple until it went down into the ground. He was laying fast asleep from weariness, and he died. Then, as Barak came in pursuit of Sisera, Jael went out to meet him and said to him, "Come, and I will show you the man whom you are seeking." So he went into her tent, and there was Sisera lying dead with a tent peg in his temple. So on that day, God subdued King Jabin before the Israelites. Then the hand of the Israelites bore harder and harder on King Jabin until they destroyed King Jabin. So Jael is the one who kills him.
So, okay. So Jael.
It's Jael.
Jael. Her husband was the head of...
He was Heber the Kenite.
Which is different than a Canaanite.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And they were in like a...
Alliance
with the Canaanite.
That's what it sounds like with King Jabin.
And Sisera.
Yeah, his general.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why
did she do it?
We
don't actually get the explanation for that. I know, it's annoying.
You know,
it's because of God.
You know what? Well, fine, but you know what the most annoying part of that is like women hardly get mentioned in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do, you never get their full fucking stories. Like the one woman who brought people back to life or whatever it was the fuck she was doing.
I remember. I think it was in Acts.
Yeah, she was like the best person that they had run into at one point, and literally nothing about her in the Bible.
Right.
This woman.
It was like a couple paragraphs, yeah.
Yeah. A wife invites dude into the tent and is like, "I'll hide you," and then kills him.
Yeah.
Through the
With
head.
a fucking tent peg.
Right.
Yeah.
That's badass.
Right.
And that's where it ends?
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
What's interesting,
and
though.
It also makes people like, oh, women can't be trusted. Because even the good ones do shady shit.
Yeah. I know. Even like when Deborah, who starts off this story, and it's supposed to be the story of Deborah, who is the judge, and then she disappears for the second half of it.
Yeah.
Even Deborah, when she says the Lord will deliver Jabin into the hand of a woman, or something along those lines. I realized later in reading in the story that comes after this, it clicked for me that, oh, this isn't about like how powerful the woman is. It's about God showing his power by destroying these enemies with the weakest of the people.
Is it the weakest, though? Because she drove a fucking spike through his head.
Yeah. Yeah, Jael did. Yeah. I did not do my due diligence on this, but I remember seeing that some of this text, at least, comes from a writing called the Book of Jael. Oh, okay. So it sounds like there's probably more writings about that character, or it was a really short book.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm again disappointed because in the one opportunity they had to like tell us more about a character that does a cool thing, we don't get it. But we get a lot of stories about men doing shit that nobody cares about constantly. There's whole books where they say everything twice. Just if you're running up against a fucking word count constraint or a time constraint, I don't know, maybe cut out all the double speak.
Yeah. Well, if it makes you feel any better.
It's not the Clockwork Orange, guys.
Yeah. If it makes you feel any better. So that was chapter 4 of the Book of Judges. Chapter 5 is them basically telling the same story again, but this time as a poem.
Oh, fun.
So it's nothing new to it. It's literally just as a poem. The
same story. Melodically.
Yeah. So Judges 5 is a poem called The Song of Deborah. This may actually date back to 1200 BCE and might be the oldest writing in the entire Bible.
Wow.
So I'm not going to read it because it's just a poem version of what we just said.
Is it a good poem?
I mean, as far as the Bible goes, sure.
Would you rather have just read chapter 5 and skipped over chapter 4?
I think if I just read chapter 5, then I probably wouldn't have quite understood what the story is.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's kind of nice, like that they wrote out like a narrative version of it, but I'm also not a big poetry person,
Right.
Like there's that Mark Danielewski book, Only Revolutions.
Yeah.
I can never get through that. I couldn't figure out what was going on with the people.
You have to read it. You have to choose how to read it.
Yeah, I know. I tried doing all that stuff, and it's just too much poetry. I just can't understand what is going. Just tell me what are they fucking doing?
You have to read
what are they doing?
You have to read. You have to keep flipping back and forth.
And that doesn't help. I read one page, I can't tell what they're doing.
It is very heavy on the poetic image.
Yeah. And in the Song of Deborah, one thing that's kind of interesting about this is she mentions the writer of it mentions a bunch of tribes throughout the book. And again, this might be the oldest writing that we have in the Bible. And what's interesting is it's missing some tribes.
Oh.
So what they don't mention is Judah, Simeon, or Levi. So what's a possibility to this is that this predates those tribes being part of the group. Either like they haven't shown up at that point or they weren't part of the confederacy of tribes.
Right.
Yeah. So that was Deborah. You were hoping for more.
Well, you fucking sold me on you're like this badass woman, and half of the story is not even about her.
No, I know.
She literally just said, "Hey, dude, you go here."
Yeah.
And God will deliver them into the hands of a woman. By the way, not me. I'm not the woman. It's a woman.
Right.
I didn't say be. I'm going to stay here.
Well, what's interesting, though, is
and judge.
Yeah. All Jael did was take out the general.
Right.
So there's more to do.
Yeah.
And all we get at the end of it is that the Israelites bore down harder and harder on King Jabin until they destroyed King Jabin.
Right.
In theory, I guess Deborah would have had something to do with that, but we don't hear about it.
Yeah. It's especially since we get the story about the dude who got stabbed in his fat. Right?
Yeah.
That story was so descriptive.
Yeah.
It makes me so mad. There's no way that people can say that the Bible is pro-woman, because in all of the opportunities that they've had to be pro-woman and to really idolatrize these women in the Bible, these actual badass characters,
Yeah.
they don't do it. Even fucking Mary, Mother of God, is trivialized, and she gave birth to a baby who is the son of God and never got to fuck first.
A lot of people think she never fucked at all.
Well, that's stupid.
I know. Considering
she had other children.
Yeah,
they were not the son
they
of
were
God.
mentioned multiple times.
Right. She didn't have.
They were adopted.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Next up. Oh.
No, I'm just so mad that it's next up already. I feel like I just want to walk out of this podcast right now.
You know,
I'm done. I'm going to have like a reality TV moment where I slam the mic on the ground and from a distance you hear me go, I'm fucking done.
It sucks when we get into a situation like this, like, and I feel like this is true of our lives too. But like now all I can think of is like worse stuff to tell you. Like, I think this is the last woman we could ever cover in the Bible. I don't think there are any more.
No, because we talk about Delilah. She's an evil demon.
Oh, that's
woman,
true. That's
right?
true. No. Well, Delilah was Samson and Delilah.
Yeah, she cuts his hair. She's an evil demon woman.
Oh, I've never thought of her as a demon woman.
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
I get what you're saying
yeah.
though. Okay.
I don't think she's an actual
But
demon.
you're right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't even think of that. Delilah is coming up because she's a role model.
A nuisance
Yeah.
at best in the
Yeah.
Bible. Again, another woman where men can just point to her and be like, see?
Right.
See? This is what we're talking about.
Right. Those women always trying to get you to cut your hair. Anyway, next up.
All right.
Getting fleeced by God. The next judge is a guy named Gideon, also called Jerubbaal. Doesn't matter. I keep changing how I pronounce it throughout these readings, I think. And I've actually cut out several times where they call him that just because it's like, you get it, it's Gideon, but they do keep going back and forth between these names. Just to set some expectations, there seems to be a lot of unknown context in the story, especially as we get towards the end of it. It's just a little, it's weird. The Israelites did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them into the hand of Midian 7 years. Because of Midian, the Israelites provided for themselves hiding places in the mountains, caves, and strongholds. For whenever the Israelites put in seed, the people of the east would come up against them. They would encamp against them and destroy the produce of the land as far as the neighborhood of Gaza, and leave no sustenance in Israel, nor any sheep or ox or donkey. For they and their livestock would come up, and they would even bring their tents as thick as locusts. Neither they nor their camels could be counted, so they wasted the land as they came in. Thus Israel was greatly impoverished because of Midian, and the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help. When the Israelites cried to the Lord on account of the Midianites, the Lord sent a prophet to the Israelites, and he said to them, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I led you up from Egypt and brought you out of the house of slavery, and I delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians and from the hand of all who oppressed you, and drove them out before you and gave you their land. And I said to you, I am the Lord your God. You shall not pay reverence to the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you live, but you have not given heed to my voice." So the last part of that, where verses 7 through 10, when it starts with when the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and the whole part about the prophet whose name we never hear.
Right.
That's all in square brackets in the Bible that I was reading. It notes that this is missing from the Q manuscript, which is apparently a prominent manuscript, but other manuscripts must have had it, so they kept these
Okay.
verses in there. It's just something to keep in mind when it comes to like, if you take that out, it doesn't really change anything, but
There's no prophet.
yeah, there's no prophet, nameless prophet there.
Right.
Yeah. You know, it's very anti-immigrant, this passage, where it's talking about the Midianites coming in, you know, their tents as thick as locusts, and how they're laying waste to the land. Their very presence is like there's draining the land of resources and stuff like that.
Right.
It sounds a lot like anti-immigrant stuff, propaganda that you hear even today.
Yeah.
We have a lot of readings to get through in this episode, unfortunately, and it can be pretty boring listening to all of them. So I thought just for this episode, we do something a little fun. And every time there's a double entendre, you're going to hear this. Now, I try not to overuse this, so when you hear it, it really deserves it.
Okay.
Now, the angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash, as his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, "The Lord is with you, you mighty warrior." Gideon answered him, "But sir, if the Lord is with us, why then has all of this happened to us? And where are all his wonderful deeds that our ancestors recounted to us, saying, 'Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt?' But now the Lord has cast us off and given us into the hand of the Midian." Then the Lord turned to him and said, "Go in this might of yours and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. I hereby commission you." He responded, "But sir, how can I deliver Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." The Lord said to him, "But I will be with you, and you shall strike down the Midianites, every one of them." Then he said to him, "If now I have found favor with you, then show me a sign that it is you who speak to me. Do not depart from here until I come to you and bring out my present and set it before you." And he said, "I will stay until you return." So Gideon went into his house and prepared a kid and unleavened cakes from an ephah of flour. The meat he put in a basket, and the broth he put in a pot, and brought them to him under the oak and presented them. The angel of God said to him, "Take the meat and the unleavened cakes and put them on this rock and pour out the broth." And he did so. Then the angel of the Lord reached out the tip of his staff that was in his hand and touched the meat and unleavened cakes. And a fire sprang up from the rock and consumed the meat and unleavened cakes. And the angel of the Lord vanished from his sight. Then Gideon perceived that it was the angel of the Lord. And Gideon said, "Help me, Lord God, for I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." But the Lord said to him, "Peace be to you. Do not fear. You shall not die." Then Gideon built an altar there to the Lord and called it, "The Lord is Peace." To this day, it still stands in Ophrah. That night, the Lord said to him, "Take your father's bull, the second bull 7 years old, and pull down the altar of Baal that belongs to your father, and cut down the sacred pole that is beside it, and build an altar to the Lord your God on top of the stronghold here, in proper order. Then take the second bull and offer it as a burnt offering with the wood of the sacred pole that you cut down." So Gideon took 10 of his servants and did as the Lord had told him. But because he was too afraid of his family and the townspeople to do it by day, he did it by night.
Okay, so how old was this kid?
I don't think it says actually how old he is.
I get the vibe that he's pretty young.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. When you, I'm gonna jump around here.
Yeah.
Because the thing that's stuck in my head is when he brings the meat from, I assume you said kid.
Yeah.
So that must mean baby goat.
I can't remember.
Baby goat. It's baby goat. That's a kid. Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before. So
you never heard the baby goats are called kid? Like
no.
little baby goats are called kids?
No.
No?
I've never heard that.
Rock, have you been living under? I feel like that's a common knowledge question. or a thing.
Really? I've never.
Everyone who
I thought it
knew
was called
that
a goatite.
everyone who knew that a young goat was called a kid, email Josh. I didn't know that you knew this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've never heard that.
Okay.
So when people are calling children kids,
yeah,
they're saying you're a bunch of I was going to say billy goats. You're a bunch of baby goats.
Baby goats.
Okay. Yeah.
And then he sets him on the rock, and the rock bursts into flames. But all I can
when he touches the staff to it.
When the angel
there's a lighter on it, I think.
Well, I just picture like when it sets on fire, and like in the air, you can hear God just being like, nom, 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 nom. Like Cookie Monster. Like that's how God eats.
That's when he's really hungry, he just strikes a goat in a field somewhere with lightning.
Anyway.
More broth.
And then Gideon
realizes
it's an angel.
It's an angel.
Because it turns into its true form with all the fucking eyeballs. And then he's scared. And God's like, oh, it's okay. It's all right. Don't be scared. It's all right.
Yeah.
Don't be scared. It's one of my guys. It'll be fine.
Right. Yeah, it's another one of those weird instances where it's like, is it the angel of the Lord? Is it the Lord himself? You know?
Yeah.
It's very up in the air about this.
It's the Metatron.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? He's an angel, but he's the voice of God.
Right. Mm-hmm. So and then obviously the Lord says to take his father's bull, the second bull, which 7 years old. There's probably something I could have looked up for that, but I didn't. And pull down the altar of Baal that belongs to his father.
And he does it and puts up a new one to God.
And it says to take down the sacred poles. So we talked about this a little bit in the last episode. Sacred poles actually should be translated to Asherah poles. It's an altar to Baal, and there's Asherah poles around. So monuments to Asherah,
right?
The wife of Yahweh.
Yes. And
then he has him pull down the Asherah poles and use those as fuel to burn the sacrifice
of the other bull.
Of the bull, yeah. God was even hungrier. When the townspeople rose early in the morning, the altar of Baal was broken down, and the sacred pole beside it was cut down, and the second bull was offered on the altar that had been built. So they said to one another, "Who has done this?" After searching and inquiring, they were told, "Gideon, son of Joash, did it." Then the townspeople said to Joash, "Bring out your son so that he may die, for he has pulled down the altar of Baal and cut down the sacred pole beside it." But Joash said to all who were arrayed against him, "Will you contend for Baal, or will you defend his cause? Whoever contends for him shall be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him contend for himself, because his altar has been pulled down." Therefore, on that day, Gideon was called Jerubbaal. That is to say, let Baal contend against him, because he pulled down his altar.
I mean, they have a point.
Yeah, that line, "if he is a god, let him contend for himself."
Yeah.
I feel like I want that on a t-shirt.
Yeah. I mean, if they would just follow that same idea throughout the whole rest of the Bible.
They just kind of live their lives according to that principle.
When God was like, kill all these people, if they were just like, well, you're God, so maybe you do it.
Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't be fighting for that cause. Joash is the one, apparently, according to God, was the one who built that altar.
Yeah, I mean, he's got his son's back. That's cool.
Yeah, that's good.
Good for him.
Yeah. It did kind of make me think of this from the perspective of the people who were pissed about this. And I was like, I mean, yeah, like they tore down your religious altar, your religious,
Yeah.
your religious
And built a new one on top of it.
Yeah, your
Yeah.
place of worship and everything. That would make a lot of people pissed.
Sure, definitely.
You know. Then all the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east came together, and they crossed over and encamped in the valley of Jezreel. But the Spirit of the Lord took possession of Gideon, and he sounded the trumpet, and the Abiezrites were called out to follow him. He sent messengers throughout all Manasseh, and they too were called out to follow him. He also sent messengers to Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, and they went up to meet him. Then Gideon said to God, "In order to see whether you will deliver Israel by my hand, as you have said, I'm going to lay a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece alone, and it is dry on all the ground, then I shall know that you will deliver Israel by my hand, as you have said." And it was so. When he arose early the next morning and squeezed the fleece, he wrung enough dew from the fleece to fill a bowl of water. Then Gideon said to God, "Do not let your anger burn against me, but let me speak one more time. Let me, please, take trial with the fleece just once more. Let it be dry only on the fleece, and on all the ground let there be dew." And God did so that night. It was dry on the fleece only, and on all the ground there was dew.
You were very excited about that. You guys should have seen his face when it was coming to that line. He was like, "Oh, this is gonna be funny."
What's funny is, like, when I was recording this, I was getting so tired of doing these recordings. And we weren't, I don't think I was even halfway through at this point. But I was like, I recorded it that way, just off the top of my head. And I was like, I'm not even doing a second one. I'm not leaving myself an option. That's what it's going to be.
Okay, so I'm confused a lot, but specifically here, God is the one that said, "I know that you're going to do what I want you to if the fleece is covered in dew and the ground is dry."
No, so Gideon is asking basically for a sign, right?
Oh.
So Gideon is saying, all right, if you
make the fleece wet.
Basically, yeah.
And leave the ground dry.
Right.
I know that I'm doing the right thing.
Kind of, yeah. That you're with me.
Right.
That God is going to be with
And so
him.
God did it.
Yep.
Wasn't good enough.
Nope.
Had to do the...
I mean, to be honest, this is the closest we get to a scientific experiment in the Bible. He's kind of actually doing his due diligence.
Yeah. Okay. God, I said covered in dew. This is soaked.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure if, like, maybe a dog didn't just come pee on it.
Right.
So let's do it again.
Are you going to watch me as I squeeze the fleece?
Yeah. But maybe let's do the opposite this time, because I didn't think through the fact that, like, animals could come pee on this. So if they could pee around it and not on it directly, then...
Turns out they don't get dew in this area at all.
So arid.
So God is just having animals come pee
on it. Yeah. It was right.
It was enough to fill a bowl.
It's just, and the funny thing is God was not like, excuse me, you want me to do it again?
Right.
The first time wasn't good enough for you? I'm
having the angel come and set the food on fire wasn't enough.
I'm fucking God.
Yeah. I've got other things to do. You have things to do. We're not waiting a whole nother day.
You didn't come to me. I came to you. Isn't that proof enough? You are the least of all your family.
Yeah.
You said it yourself.
Right. Yeah, it's such a weird sign to come up with.
Right.
You know?
It's like he was looking around and was like,
what's not wet?
Can you make this thing wet? Oh, you did. Can you make it dry?
Yeah.
All right, okay. I believe you now.
Yeah, I guess God is with me. I was having a hard time coming up with a title for that segment, and so I asked ChatGPT to come up with like a few possible titles. And I was like, just make it funny, satirical. You want to hear what they came up with?
Yeah, of course. No, I don't. Can we just skip over this whole section that you planned
Yep.
entirely?
Moving on.
I just think it's funny when you ask me stuff like this, because like, what kind of person would I be if I was like, no?
A bad co-host.
I don't want to hear this at all, actually. Can you just squeeze it in later? All right,
let's just stick to the readings.
Let's hear what our new fake god had to say.
So ChatGPT titles, Gideon and the Fleece Book, a guide to divine status updates.
Okay.
It's a lot of colon titles in this. The Unlikely Hero's Guide to Defeating Midianites and Winning at Life. Wheats up, Doc. How Gideon threshed his way to the top. Oh, you'll like this one. The Fleece Awakens, an angel's visit to a galaxy far, far away.
Okay.
Gideon, from zero to hero, one fleece at a time. Gideon's Guide to Wet Fleece and Dry Ground, a moisturizing journey.
Oh my God, that's the best one. That's the best one.
I was really trying to get through that one straight faced.
That is the best one.
Yeah.
Best one.
A moisturizing journey.
Moisturizing journey.
The Midianite Busters, how Gideon got his groove back. Fleece, please. How Gideon became a biblical detective.
Ah.
And then the last one, Fear Factor, Gideon Edition. Conquering insecurities and Midianites.
Yeah, the moisture one is the best one.
Yeah.
Also, like,
really
I'm surprised you didn't realize that Gideon is the name of the villain from Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Oh, yeah.
And like play off that at all.
Yeah, totally didn't think of it.
Yeah.
G-Man.
Drop the ball.
I know. Thus as Israel. As in like Sparta. Like the, yeah. Anyway. Then Gideon and all the troops who were with him rose early and encamped beside the spring of Herod. The Lord said to Gideon, the troops with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hand. Israel would only take credit away from me, saying, my own hand has delivered me. Now therefore, proclaim this in the hearing of the troops. Whoever is fearful and trembling, let him return home. Thus Gideon sent them out. 22,000 returned, and 10,000 remained. Then the Lord said to Gideon, the troops are still too many. Take them down to the water, and I will sift them out for you there. So he brought the troops down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, all those who lap the water with their tongues as a dog laps, you shall put to one side. All those who kneel down to drink, putting their hands to their mouths, you shall put to the other side. The number of those who lapped was 300, but all the rest of the troops knelt down to drink water. Then the Lord said to Gideon, with the 300 who lapped, I will deliver you and give the Midianites into your hand. Let all the others go to their homes. So the people took provisions in their hands and their trumpets, and he sent all the rest of Israel back to their own tents, but retained the 300. I look very confused by this.
It's just such a weird story. The fact that God is insecure about the number of troops he has fighting for him is funny.
Yeah.
There's too many. It's just going to look like they just
did it themselves.
Because there were so many of them.
It's going to make people think I don't need to exist.
Right. Yeah. And so Gideon has to go to the troops and be like, okay, God says if you're scared, you can go home.
Yeah.
This isn't a trick.
Which is actually kind of a nice thing to do.
It's not a trick.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Literally, you can just leave. And a lot of them did.
2/3.
Yeah. And then still it was too many for God to feel okay that his power is the thing that caused it and not just numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I really thought that the ones that lapped at the water like a dog, which is a weird way to drink water out of a river.
Yeah.
We're going to be the ones that got sent home because it's so fucking weird.
Right. But no, he wants the weirdos.
He wants the ones that act like dogs.
Yeah. They're, in theory, the weaker ones. This is the story that made me think that, with Deborah.
Right.
Like the whole line about delivering into the hands of a woman. And like that was not as nice as it kind of comes across.
Yeah.
Yeah,
true. Yes. Also, Gideon gets a fucking novel
Yeah. Oh, we're not even close to
And Deborah got
he's the rest of the episode.
A hot 2 chapters.
Yeah. And the second chapter just reiterated the first.
Right.
Yeah.
And only like half of her actual story was about her.
Right. So really she gets half of a chapter.
We get literally every detail about Gideon's adventure.
Yeah. And his kids are going to come up too.
Oh, come on. Really?
Yeah.
And they're all boys. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Of course.
Again, besides Delilah, I guess.
Yeah.
Probably the last woman in the Bible. That's not entirely true. Eventually we'll get to Jezebel.
Oh, yes. Jezebel.
Oh, and Bathsheba.
Yeah.
It's coming up.
They're all not great women.
No.
I know. I had a dog named Jezebel once. So, and then we're going to get the story of the Spartans versus the Persian king Xerxes.
Yeah.
Would that story have happened already?
The 300?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked. So I asked myself, is 300 something that came from the story of Leonidas? If you're not aware, Leonidas and the 300 Spartans happened in about 480 BCE and is an actual thing. It's a real historical event that happened. It probably wasn't anything like the movie was.
No.
But it actually...
Or the comic book that it is.
Or the comic book, yeah.
Made from.
But it actually was a historical event. There's a statue to Leonidas in Sparta, which is still there to this day.
And they talk about Xerxes in the Bible.
Yeah.
In that one story we read.
Yep. Xerxes is talked about. Yep. That happened in 480 BCE or around there. And this was probably written earlier, but not much earlier. Also, there aren't any other similarities between the stories besides the number of troops. So this is unlikely a copy. It's probably just a coincidence.
Right.
But, obviously that's where your mind goes with this.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. And then the only other thing about this that I was thinking, I happen to just remember some sermon at some point that I heard about the story, and they talked about the lapping of the water versus kneeling down to drink and stuff. I just remember them saying that the reason why the people who were lapping at the water were worse was because people who were kneeling down are able to like look out and see if enemies are approaching. They're being attentive basically by cupping the water up and bringing it to their faces.
Yeah.
So
also, listen, when you put water in your hand and before you drink it, you can see if there's any little floaties.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Whereas if you're just drinking right from the water, who knows what else you're getting.
Yeah. Especially if you're the last downriver from all these other people lapping at the water.
Well, also people.
I'm just picturing all 300 of them in a line.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah. I mean, how else would you do it?
Yeah.
You can't be on top of each other.
Right.
But people also bathe themselves in the river.
Right.
And they didn't really use toilet paper back then. So a lot of dirty ass water.
Right.
Coming off people. And then you're
not that scooping it up in your hand is going to make that any better.
No, but it'll protect you from floaters.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Or little fishies or whatever,
Yeah.
What an insult. That's what I'm going to start saying to people when I think that they're less than capable. I'm going to be like, you water lapper. Bunch of fucking water lappers.
Probably drink water like a dog. That same night, the Lord said to him, "Get up, attack the camp, for I have given it into your hand. But if you fear to attack, go down to the camp with your servant Purah, and you shall hear what they say. And afterward, your hands shall be strengthened to attack the camp." Then he went down with his servant Purah to the outposts of the armed men who were in the camp. The Midianites and the Amalekites and all the people of the east lay along the valley as thick as locusts, and their camels were without number, countless as the sand on the seashore. When Gideon arrived, there was a man telling a dream to his comrade, and he said, "I had a dream, and in it a cake of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian and came to the tent and struck it so that it fell. It turned upside down and the tent collapsed." And then his comrade answered, "This is no other than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash, a man of Israel." Into his hand God has given Midian and all the army.
How is the loaf of bread the sword of Gideon?
I don't know. A cake of barley bread.
Also, has he attacked anybody yet? How is his sword known?
I don't know.
How do they even know about Gideon?
The whole, like I said, there's missing context here, I think.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't entirely sure when I was reading this, like, are these people in his army that are talking here? Or because it kind of sounds like it might be
it's the other
other army.
Yeah.
So he went to some place where he was able to hear the enemy soldiers talking.
Because nobody knows what he fucking looks like.
I guess.
But somehow they know that his sword is powerful.
Yeah. And they know who his dad is. His sword is well known throughout all the land.
This loaf of bread took your fucking tent down. That's the sword of Gideon, you guys. I don't know if you know this.
Maybe it's just shoddy Midian.
I can translate dreams. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you that this loaf of bread that turned upside down and took a tent down is the sword of Gideon.
Right.
Who's Gideon? I don't know. I'm just telling you this is what the dream means.
That guy who's pretending not to listen to us. That's Gideon. What? What? When Gideon heard telling of the dream and its interpretation, he worshipped, and he returned to the camp of Israel and said, "Get up, for the Lord has given the army of Midian into your hand." After he divided the 300 men into 3 companies and put trumpets into the hands of all of them and empty jars with torches inside the jars, he said to them, "Look at me and do the same when I come to the outskirts of the camp. Do as I do. When I blow the trumpet, I and all who are with me, then you also blow the trumpets around the whole camp and shout, 'For the Lord and for Gideon.'" So Gideon and the 100 who were with him came to the outskirts of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, when they had just set the watch, and they blew the trumpets and smashed the jars that were in their hands. So the 3 companies blew the trumpets and broke the jars, holding in their left hands the torches, and in their right hands the trumpets to blow, and they cried, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." Every man stood in his place around the camp, and all the men in camp ran. They cried out and fled. When they blew the 300 trumpets, the Lord set every man's sword against his fellow and against all the army, and the army fled. And the men of Israel were called out from Naphtali, and from Asher, and from all Manasseh, and they pursued after the Midianites. Then Gideon sent messengers throughout all the hill country of Ephraim, saying, "Come down against the Midianites and seize the waters against them." So all the men of Ephraim were called out, and they seized the waters. They captured the 2 captains of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. They killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb, and Zeb they killed at the winepress of Zeb. They brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon beyond the Jordan.
Super convenient that they were killed at places that were named after them.
Right? It's kind of like it was meant to be. Yeah.
Can you please explain to me these jars? I don't quite understand what's going on.
It's confusing. Yeah, because this is not possible. So it's not very intuitive. But they had torches lit and they put jars over them to hide them until
lit.
Yeah, so they surround the camp.
Okay.
The 300 surround the camp with their torches hidden inside the jars.
Okay.
And then when they give the signal, they all break the jars. And the torches are all lit so they can see all the torches. And then they blow the trumpet and they shout and all that kind of stuff. So it's supposed to be kind of like a shock and awe thing to make it seem like they're just surrounded and there's tons of them and everything when there's actually only 300.
Yes. So the torch can't stay lit?
No.
Under a jar?
No. Basic science.
I was like, when you were talking about torches and jars, I was thinking like clear for some reason, even though they probably didn't have clear glass back then.
No, it probably would have been pottery.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was thinking like, oh, they mean lanterns.
Right.
But then you said they broke the jars and the torches were lit.
Right.
Or were whatever. So did they break No, because what would have been the point of the jars if the torches weren't lit? You know what I
Right,
mean? Like, why would you need a jar if you were just lighting the torch after you broke the jars?
I guess lighting the torch at that time would have taken too much time or something, like they didn't want to.
They would have had you anyway.
Yeah, they wanted to have it lit already.
Also, where did they get 300 trumpets from?
Yeah, it sounds
I don't even know that we can do that today on short notice.
Yeah, it sounds like everybody has trumpets because they said something about that when they were sending home a bunch of those people. Everybody took provisions in their trumpets and stuff like.
Oh, everyone just has a trumpet?
It must have been like a thing. Every soldier had a trumpet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's a necessary thing for soldiers.
A trumpet.
Yeah.
It's like a rape whistle.
That's mainly what it was used for.
Yeah. Okay. All right. None of it makes sense, but okay.
Yeah.
I don't expect it to.
No. Again, like I said, a lot of missing context to this. There's probably like an older version of this that gave you a more full story of this, but or not.
Yeah.
Or this has always just been terrible.
Right.
Bread grudge. So the Ephraimites are pissed at Gideon for not having invited them to fight the Midianites. And Gideon basically kisses their ass in response, saying, "Aren't your grapes better than ours? Also, you killed the captains of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. How could you compare yourselves to us?" And they all come down after that. By the way, I actually just looked this up right before the episode. I was like, who the fuck are the Midianites actually? Like I keep saying this as if there's a country called Midian, and there's not.
Right.
So apparently nobody really knows exactly who the Midianites are supposed to be. But one of the leading theories of it is that they, much like how Israel was a confederacy of tribes, like all these different tribes came together to be called Israel or Judah in the southern kingdom. Midian was probably just like that, a confederacy of tribes. So like these other countries like Moab that they talk about and other ones, they were probably a confederacy of all of these. So.
Gotcha.
Then Gideon came to the Jordan and crossed over, he and the 300 who were with him, exhausted but still pursuing. So he said to the people of Succoth, "Please give some loaves of bread to my followers, for they are exhausted, and I am pursuing Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian." But the officials of Succoth said, "Do you already have in your possession the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna, that we should give bread to your army?" Gideon replied, "Well then, when the Lord has given Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, I will trample your flesh on the thorns of the wilderness and on the briars." From there he went up to Penuel and made the same request of them. And the people of Penuel answered him as the people of Succoth had answered. So he said to the people of Penuel, "When I come back victorious, I will break down this tower." Getting some sass from these people.
Why didn't you ding the town of Succoth?
I know. I was thinking it wasn't set up very well to be like
Succoth and Penile.
Penuel. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So I was distracted by you reading along with the reading.
Okay.
Your mouth is moving along with it.
That's how I just read.
Yeah. So he wants bread. They're like, "Well, you didn't do.
You haven't actually killed them yet.
Yeah, so we're not giving you bread yet." And then he's like, "Well, I'll motherfucking kill you then." Basically.
Yeah. When I'm done, I will come back.
Coming back for you.
Yeah. And what's interesting about this is it's like a civil war.
Yeah.
Really. Like except it's not like the whole nation of Israel it's like just tribes.
Right.
Individual tribes kind of go into war with each other a little bit. But yeah, and they also don't tell you that there's a tower at Penuel, but he does say that he's going to break down a tower there. So I actually put down there, they might be writing checks that their towers can't cash. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor with their army, about 15,000 men, all who were left of all the army of the people of the east. For 120,000 men bearing arms had fallen. So Gideon went up by the caravan route and attacked the army, for the army was off its guard. Zebah and Zalmunna fled, and he pursued them and took the 2 kings of Midian and threw all the army into a panic. When Gideon returned from the battle, he caught a young man, one of the people of Succoth, and questioned him, and he listed for him the officials and elders of Succoth, 77 people. Then he came to the people of Succoth and said, "Here are Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you taunted me, saying, 'Do you already have in your possession the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna, that we should give bread to your troops who are exhausted?' So he took the elders of the city, and he took thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them he trampled the people of Succoth. He also broke down the tower of Penuel and killed the men of the city." So more moral behavior from God's chosen savior.
Yeah. Well, he did warn them.
It's true.
And
he
they
gave them a heads up.
They could have left.
Yeah.
They could have taken out all the thorns.
Yeah.
At the very least.
Right. There. See if he can do anything to us now.
Also, why were these kings' armies unprepared?
Yeah.
They had to have known what was going on. A lot of them had already been killed.
Yeah.
Most of them.
Right. Over 100,
Yeah.
120,000.
Yeah. So there's 15,000 left, and they're just caught unawares.
Right.
How does that happen?
Yeah.
Is it more than 300 people at this point fighting? Still just the 300.
I think still just the 300. Yeah. And you would imagine there would be a few less, at least.
Right. None of them died.
Yeah. None of them have died.
Yeah.
Right. One weird thing I noticed is that in 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 25, they credit King Jeroboam as having built Penuel. So this comes later in the Bible.
Okay.
Right. They credit King Jeroboam as having built Penuel. The verse also said he built Shechem, which we've heard about quite a bit too. Apparently, some people think this just means that he fortified the cities, but that's not what it actually says.
Right.
So, it's just this odd thing where it's like, oh, wait, who built these cities?
They were built on rock and roll.
He definitely built that city on rock and roll. That's why everybody had trumpets.
Right?
Then he said to Zebah and Zalmunna, "What about the men whom you killed at Tabor?" They answered, "As you are, so they were, every one of them. They resembled the sons of a king." And he replied, "They were my brothers, the sons of my mother. As the Lord lives, if you had saved them alive, I would not kill you." So he said to Jether, his firstborn, "Go kill them." But the boy did not draw his sword, for he was afraid, because he was still a boy. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said, "You come and kill us, for as the man is, so is his strength." So Gideon went and killed Zebah and Zalmunna, and he took the crescents that were on the necks of their camels. So, yeah, that's such a weird
It feels
passage.
out of order, too. Didn't he already kill them?
That's actually a good question. Did they
wasn't
say?
that whole previous thing? Was he went back to the...
They pursued them and took the 2 kings of Midian.
Oh.
And threw all the armies into a panic.
Okay. I just assumed when they said took them,
Yeah.
they meant their lives.
Yep. No, they have not killed them.
Okay.
Yet, so
Now they have. So, okay, sorry. And the kid was Gideon's kid?
Gideon's son, Jether.
And Gideon told Jether to kill them, or the 2 kings were taunting the kid and was like...
Gideon tells Jether to kill them.
And he didn't want to because he was a baby.
Yeah. And then Zebah and Zalmunna say, "You come and kill." I don't know who they're talking to, if they're
Right.
talking to Jether or to Gideon.
Right.
But you come and kill us, for as the man is, so is his strength. Whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah. And also, what was the whole point of the kid thing?
Well, he actually comes up again
Okay.
a little bit. So like,
Does Dad refer back to his previous disappointment? Is that how he comes up again? Like, remember the time you disappointed me greatly?
right,
Now you're gonna make up for it.
right. No,
No.
I don't think so.
Okay.
And I might be wrong about it, but I think it's the same kid that comes up again.
Jether.
We'll see if I'm right about that. Then the Israelites said to Gideon, "Rule over us, you and your son and your grandson also, for you have delivered us out of the hand of Midian." Gideon said to them, "I will not rule over you, and my son will not rule over you. The Lord will rule over you." Then Gideon said to them, "Let me make a request of you. Each of you give me an earring he has taken as spoil." For the enemy had golden earrings because they were Ishmaelites. "We willingly give them," they answered. So they spread a garment, and each threw into it an earring that they had taken as spoil. The weight of the golden earrings that were requested was 1,700 shekels of gold. Gideon made an ephod of it and put it in his town, in Ophrah, and all Israel prostituted themselves to it there. And it became a snare to Gideon and his family. So Midian was subdued before the Israelites, and they lifted up their heads no more. So the land had rest 40 years in the days of Gideon. Thought about throwing in a ding there when they prostituted themselves, but I was like, that's not really a double entendre. It's just an entendre.
Yeah. How do they prostitute themselves to a Ephra?
Ephod. It's
Ephod.
EPHOD.
What's an ephod?
An ephod is a ornamental like chest piece.
Okay.
That is used, at least in Judaism. I don't know if it's used in other religions. It might be, but it's basically an ornamental chest piece that's ceremonial for priests.
Okay. And
so
who was wearing this?
He nobody was wearing it. He made one.
Okay.
And he put it in his town
On display.
That's what it sounds like.
And people prostituted themselves.
It sounds like he turned it into an idol of some sort.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and people were coming and worshiping it. Maybe that
doesn't feel okay.
No, it's not. And that's kind of like it's consistent with the book where God delivers them, and then the moral code starts breaking down.
So it wasn't his death that caused it. It was their own conceit. This time, the breakdown. Family. Yeah.
Yes, but they also, as we're gonna see in a second, after he dies, it seems like Israelites go even further back into paganism or something like that. You know, it's kind of an inconsistent thing here at this point. Now Gideon had 70 sons, for he had many wives. His concubine, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son, and he named him Abimelech. Then Gideon died at a good old age and was buried in the tomb of his father. As soon as Gideon died, the Israelites relapsed and prostituted themselves with the Baals, making Baal-berith their god. The Israelites did not remember the Lord their God, who had rescued them out of the hand of all their enemies on every side, and they did not exhibit loyalty to the house of Jerubbaal, that is, Gideon, in return for all the good that he had done to Israel. So yeah, they went further away from Yahweh.
Gotcha.
In this,
he had 70 children.
70 sons specifically.
70 sons.
Yeah.
Because he had many wives.
Many wives.
And also a concubine.
Yeah, at least one. Yeah.
Whose child got named out specifically because it's Abimelech?
Abimelech, yep.
And I know that name is familiar.
Yep. So we actually talked when we were going through talking about Isaac. We mentioned there was that city that he went to with his wife and said that his wife was a sister. Yeah. And the king there was named Abimelech.
Oh.
And I think we pronounced it Abimelech.
We did. We did.
Because we were reading from the NIV at that point, and the NIV spells it a little differently.
Okay.
So it's the same name, but
we don't know if it's the same person.
Very likely not going to be the same person that this is based on even.
Right, because that would have been Isaac.
Right. Yeah.
Which would have been way before this.
Way before this.
Yeah. So why call this child out specifically?
Because he's going to be very prevalent as the story continues.
Oh, we're not done with this.
No
story.
No, like I said, Gideon's now dead.
Right.
But now we're going to be talking about those kids of his.
Okay. Do the kids was one of them become a judge?
They never mention judges again.
So Deborah gets one fucking chapter, and now we have to listen about his goddamn genetic line.
Yeah. Even though, and what's interesting is, the Israelites wanted him to be their king.
Right.
And all that stuff. And him and his sons and his grandsons and everything.
Yeah.
And then we get the story of his lineage at least the next generation.
Yeah.
Of it. So it's an interesting thing where it's like, well, I kind of like wonder maybe he was a king.
Yeah.
Actually, and
yeah.
But the lineage didn't last long. So yeah. Burning down the house. Abimelech decides he wants to become king, and he's going to recruit some help for it. Now Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem, to his mother's kinfolk, and said to them and to the whole clan of his mother's family, "Which is better for you, that all 70 of the sons of Jerubbaal rule over you, or that one rule over you? Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh." So his mother's kinfolk spoke all these words on his behalf in the hearing of all the lords of Shechem, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech. For they said, "He is our brother." They gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the temple of Baal-berith, with which Abimelech hired worthless and reckless fellows who followed him. He went to his father's house in Ophrah and killed his brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal, 70 men on one stone. But Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, survived, for he hid himself. Then all the lords of Shechem and all Beth Mello came together, and they went and made Abimelech king by the oak of the pillar of Shechem. Okay, Jotham was who I was thinking of. So Jether, the other kid, doesn't come up again.
Gotcha. So this kid went to his family and was like, what do you think is better, if I rule you or a bunch of people? And he thought he was going to get an honest opinion from his own fucking family.
Yeah.
It's like if I went to your mom and was like, who do you think would make a better president? The one we have now or Josh? And she would say 100% Josh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
I mean, she's not wrong.
And then you were made president just because of that.
Yeah.
Just because your mom said you would do a good job.
Well, she gives me 70 pieces of silver. Yes. I take that and go throw a coup.
Yeah. Well, yeah. When he hires, I mean, literally, that was just a nice way of saying he hired some fucking brutes.
Yeah. It was a weird thing where they go out of their way to insult the people he hired.
Yeah.
Worthless and reckless fellows who followed him.
Yeah.
Well, they were successful though.
Yeah.
they must not have been entirely worthless.
Right. It does sound like maybe like an early version of the show Entourage.
Yeah. They were also probably very misogynistic. So they basically bankroll him into killing his brothers, except for Jotham.
Except the little one that hid.
Yeah.
The Dewey of the bunch, as you may.
Yeah. Jotham, the only surviving brother, makes a speech then, and I decided not to make this into a reading. And he tells this parable about trees, and the parable is a poem. It's not a bad poem as far as that stuff goes.
Is it better than the Giving Tree?
I mean, I suppose. Yeah.
How dare you?
I'm trying to think.
The Giving Tree is a classic Dr. Seuss tale.
Oh, I don't think I know that one, actually.
Well, it's about a tree who gives everything of herself.
Oh, I think I remember hearing.
If anything, we watched the Gay Best Friend version of that. Remember those videos I made you watch? Where this guy was playing the gay best friend of all these literary characters.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And one of them was the Giving Tree.
Okay.
It's really funny. Everyone should go look it up on YouTube. It's hilarious.
So yeah, Jotham tells the people of Shechem basically, look, if you think you acted in good faith and honor, then be happy with Abimelech. But if not, I hope you destroy each other.
Nice.
So he kind of puts this curse on them.
Yeah.
About that. And there's a couple quotes here. Let fire come out of Abimelech and devour the lords of Shechem, and let fire come out of the lords of Shechem and devour Abimelech. Also, he says, the book says, then Jotham ran away and fled, going to Beer, Beer, where he remained for fear of his brother Abimelech. And we don't hear about him again, I don't think.
He gives a grand speech, recites a poem.
Yep.
Says, I hope you all fucking kill each other.
Yeah.
And then Who's coming with me?
Right.
GTFOs.
Going to beer. They've invented a new drink there. Sounds really good.
It's really so that you can drink the water without dying from parasites, but it also gets you drunk.
Yeah. You can lap it like a dog. It's fine. Then we fast forward 3 years.
Oh.
Abimelech ruled over Israel 3 years. But God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the lords of Shechem, and the lords of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. This happened so that the violence done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might be avenged, and their blood be laid on their brother Abimelech, who killed them, and on the lords of Shechem, who strengthened his hands to kill his brothers. So the lords of Shechem set ambushes against him on the mountaintops. They robbed all who passed by them along that way, and it was reported to Abimelech. Then Gaal moved into Shechem with his kinfolk. The lords of Shechem put confidence in him. They went out into the field and gathered the grapes from their vineyards, trod them, and celebrated. Then they went into the temple of their god, ate and drank, and ridiculed Abimelech. Gaal, son of Ebed, said, "Who is Abimelech? And who are we of Shechem that we should serve him? Did not the son of Jerubbaal and Zebul his officer serve the men of Hamor, father of Shechem? Why then would we serve him? If only the people were under my command, then I would remove Abimelech. I would say to him, increase your army and come out." When Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gaal, son of Ebed, his anger was kindled. He sent messengers to Abimelech, saying, "Look, Gaal, son of Ebed, and his kinfolk have come to Shechem, and they are stirring up the city against you. Now, therefore, go by night, you and the troops who are with you, and lie in wait in the fields. Then early in the morning, as soon as the sun rises, get up and rush on the city. And when he and the troops who are with him come out against you, you may deal with them as best you can." So, new dude shows up.
Gaal.
Gaal.
What Gaal?
What? Gaal. And what's interesting too is it's Gaal. So ball, but Gaal.
Gaal.
Shows up and he's basically like, "Who is this Abimelech guy? Why do you guys all follow him? Follow me instead."
Right.
And they're
I'm better. My mom said I'm better.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of dudes running around because their mom said they do a good job.
Yeah. Yeah, and everybody's like, "Yeah, I bet he would do better." So yeah, he's gonna raise up an army against him, and you can see how this is playing out the way Jotham had kind of said it was going to.
Yeah.
And then he starts leading the troops against him. So Abimelech and all the troops with him got up by night and lay in wait against Shechem in 4 companies. When Gaal, son of Ebed, went out and stood in the entrance of the gate of the city, Abimelech and the troops with him rose from the ambush. And when Gaal saw them, he said to Zebul, "Look, people are coming down from the mountaintops." And Zebul said to him, "The shadows on the mountains look like people to you." Gaal spoke again and said, "Look, people are coming down." Then Zebul said to him, "Where is your boast now? You said, 'Who is Abimelech that we should serve him?' Are not these the troops you made light of? Go out now and fight with them." So Gaal went out at the head of the lords of Shechem and fought with Abimelech. Abimelech chased him, and he fled before him. Many fell wounded up to the entrance of the gate. So Abimelech resided at Arumah, and Zebul drove out Gaal and his kinfolk, so that they could not live on at Shechem. And Abimelech destroys the city, Arumah, and sows it with salt, which is a weird thing to do to the ruins of a city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically making it inhabitable for forever.
Yeah. So taking out these people, they're just fighting at
Back
this
and
point,
forth,
but
yeah.
going back and forth and stuff.
Yeah, I'm so glad they saved all that time on Deborah's story so we could hear about all this bullshit.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And then we get the last reading. When all the lords of the tower of Shechem heard of it, they entered the stronghold of the temple of El-Berith. Abimelech was told that all the lords of the tower of Shechem were gathered together. So Abimelech went up to Mount Zalmon Abimelech took an axe in his hand, cut down a bundle of brushwood, and took it up and laid it on his shoulder. Then he said to the troops with him, "What you have seen me do, do quickly as I have done." So every one of the troops cut down a bundle, and following Abimelech, put it against the stronghold. And they set the stronghold on fire over them, so that all the people of the tower of Shechem also died, about 1,000 men and women. Then Abimelech went to Thebez and encamped against Thebez and took it. But there was a strong tower within the city, and all the men and women and all the lords of the city fled to it and shut themselves in, and they went to the roof of the tower. Abimelech came to the tower and fought against it, and came near to the entrance of the tower to burn it with fire. But a certain woman threw an upper millstone on Abimelech's head and crushed his skull. Immediately he called to the young man who carried his armor and said to him, "Draw your sword and kill me, so people will not say about me, 'A woman killed him.'" So the young man thrust him through, and he died. When the Israelites saw that Abimelech was dead, they all went home. Thus God repaid Abimelech for his crime he committed against his father in killing his 70 brothers. And God also made all the wickedness of the people of Shechem fall back on their heads. And on them came the curse of Jotham, son of Jerubbaal.
A certain woman.
Yeah. It was
JL.
JL again. Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting thing because women play a much larger role in this book than they do in other books. Yeah.
And that says a lot because there's not a lot going on.
No.
With women. They don't even give this one a name. They just say a certain woman.
A certain woman, which is always a weird thing that they do in the Bible.
Because it makes you think that you should know who it is.
Right.
Because whenever I say to you, a certain person, you know who I'm talking about.
It's typically me.
Given the context clues, right? So I would imagine that maybe at some point in time, like as they're telling this story, they were like, "And a certain woman," and everybody was like, "Oh, yeah, Lisa."
Always throwing those upper millstones.
Yeah. She just had enough.
Yeah.
She's always the one that's had enough.
I'm trying to remember. Was this the one? Did they say that there was 1,000 people in the tower?
They said it sounded like there was a lot of people in the tower.
Yeah.
I assume this is quite a large tower.
Yeah, I know. It's like, it's an interesting thing where I kind of wonder if this is different versions of the same story because, like, they're out of nowhere. Everybody has a tower.
Towers, yeah.
There are towers everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you couldn't have a city without a tower, which makes sense if you're not going to fortify the city with like a wall, because what good are walls if you just yell them down?
Yeah.
Might as well build a tower.
Right. Yeah. Nobody can do anything to that.
Nobody's yelled a tower down yet.
Right. Oh, crap. They're getting firewood. Quick, get the millstone. We'd heard about Balberith.
Oh, yeah. They said Elbereth.
They said Elbereth. Yeah. And El being the supreme deity.
Right.
Baal being his son, in theory.
Yeah.
Apparently, they also conflated those two deities a lot, quite a bit. But El was supposed to be the basis for Yahweh, in theory. So.
Yeah. How dare he die from the hands of a woman?
Right.
Why not just die at the hands of your own soldier?
Right.
Instead?
Yeah, it's so much better.
Yeah, betrayal is much better than being killed by a woman.
Right. Yeah.
Fucking stupid.
Talk about great aim on her part.
Do you think everyone in the tower was all like watching and you can like the movie like
Give it to Lisa. She's got good aim. Yeah.
And then it hits, and everyone...
he's like, what does that sound? What? He looks up just at the right time.
Smashes him in the face.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Oh, hurry, stab me." Well, everyone up at the tower is like, "Woo!" We saw the woman throw the stone at you. We all know what happened.
Yeah.
It seems fruitless.
We all know why he stabbed you.
It's part of the story. They know.
Yeah. They know a woman killed him.
Now you just sound like an idiot, and also a woman killed you.
Right. That's probably what Abimelech means.
Killed by a woman.
Killed by a woman. An idiot killed by a woman. You've also pointed this out. Deborah only got 2 chapters, but Gideon's story took up 4 chapters.
Long ones.
Yeah. Yeah, they were long.
And Deborah's chapters were 2 of the same chapter.
Right.
But yet we get to hear about
Gideon and his
all
line.
of Gideon's story and his bastard child. Although I don't think they consider the children of concubines bastards.
Well, no, that's why he got sent away. Is because even though he wasn't the firstborn, but that's why he got sent away, is because he wasn't to be allowed the inheritance.
Gotcha.
You know, talk about splitting the inheritance 70 ways, though.
I know.
It's like,
I know.
it's a good thing they got rid of him. Who would want to split it 71 ways? Next episode, we should be getting into Samson and another judge.
Why was Gideon so important that he gets all of this story compared to the ones so far, where the next longest story was about the dude who stabbed the guy in his fat?
Right. Yeah. Which was much better written.
It was, and shorter.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I felt like that was like the solid 90-minute movie.
Yeah.
And Gideon's story was like the 3.5-hour movie that nobody actually really wants to watch.
Right.
But everybody's like, look at how great this movie is.
Yeah.
It's 3.5 hours long. It must be Oscar worthy.
Gideon, the way of water, the way of dew.
Am I conflating Greek mythology with Christianity? And like, because I know there's fleeces that pop up from time to time.
Yeah, there's a story of the golden fleece.
Yes.
Which I looked into, and that didn't seem to have anything to do with this either.
Is that a Christian story or is that a Greek myth?
No, I believe it was a Greek myth.
Okay. This is Jason and the Argonauts, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Which is interesting too. Yeah, because we had a reference to what could have been 300 in this, and then a reference that could have been
something with
both within the same story.
It's not like fleeces are uncommon.
No, it was a prevalent technology at the time.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the main reason why we get so much of Gideon is because he's the only scientist in the Bible.
I really use that scientific method.
Yeah. But what else can he do? Can he make ice cream appear on the fleece?
What if he makes the fleece wet and the ground wet?
Yeah.
Can you do that?
Can you make neither of them wet? Truly, you are God.
Can you make the underside of the fleece wet, but the top side of it dry?
He's just there for like a month trying different stuff.
All these different various wetnesses of fleeces.
Meanwhile, the Midianites are just wiping out the land.
Hold on, I only got one more to go.
Yeah. I gotta be honest, this was not a fun episode.
There was some interesting, funny circumstances that occurred in this, but it was a lot of the story of Gideon was a slog.
Yeah, it was just a lot.
There's a lot going on, and again, I revert back to like a woman drove a spike through a man's head.
Yeah,
and that was like a sentence.
Right. Yeah.
But we got a lot of information about Gideon and his family.
Yeah,
a lot.
Yeah. And it's kind of an interesting story. It's kind of like if it was better told, it would be a lot better. I mean, obviously, but it's the whole idea of one brother killing 70 brothers, and then his backers basically end up getting into a fight with him, and then they destroy each other and stuff. It's a cool story,
right? Just
told really poorly.
Yeah,
The only other thing that I didn't really mention was with Gideon and Jerubbaal. Whenever a character has two names like that, I always think, well, it's because some of the stories were told by some people with that name, and then some of the stories were told with this other name,
Yeah. Well, this one felt more like a nickname than in other circumstances, because they actually provided the reason why, and they oftentimes did not. They would just change their names. Even when Jesus would change their names,
Levi and Matthew.
Yeah. even if they mentioned it, it was just because like Jesus called them that.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Simon Peter.
Yeah. But I mean, Jerubbaal, right? Ball. He's the I can't remember what you said
God.
it means. No, I know, but the Jerubbaal means like
let him contend for himself.
Yeah,
or something like that.
The
Baal
he who
for
stood
himself.
against Baal or something like that. So, I mean, that kind of makes sense.
It'll be cool to get into Samson
Yeah.
next.
That's another story that I sort of only kind of know.
I know.
So it'll be interesting to hear if there's more to the story than what I know, or if it's literally just that, and we get like a hot paragraph about that.
Yeah.
And again, we spent all this time with Gideon.
Yeah.
And then we get a hot tale about how a woman cut off some dude's hair and he lost his power.
Right.
And then they move on. And then he dies and they move on.
And then here's a poem version of
Right,
it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's bullshit.
I think it'll be better than that.
Okay.
I haven't gotten to reading it yet, but I think that's it.
That's all I got.
Yeah. Not much to this episode, but
There's a lot to this episode.
I mean, yeah, there's just not much entertaining to this episode.
You don't have any extra things to say, is what you're saying.
No,
yes, you're done.
It's yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Josh has lived miserably ever after.
Yeah. They all lived miserably ever after. Thank you so much for checking out our podcast. Help us share the good news by sending this to a friend or leaving a review to help others find us. And if you want to support us with a donation, you can do that on our website at bsfa.cc. There.
Like, we got to end it. Stop talking.
One way or another, we're ending this episode. If I have to drive a fucking tent peg through its temple, I'm going to.